According to my good friend, emotions can be considered characters. So let's talk about emote-kuns. The phrase show don't tell is difficult in a lot of forms of media, because it might be difficult to know what they're always trying to show. Since a lot of forms of media, they might not be able to control everything they show all the time. With live action shows and kind of movies, people or props might not be/do the things that was in the intended vision. Comparatively, while I don't know everything about webtoon artists, they do seem to control basically most of the webtoon. Now, if you don't know, drawing is incredibly difficult, as I tried to learn how to draw and definitely failed. But if you don't need to draw it, why would you draw it? Why would you spend time and effort drawing something that isn't necessary? The classic Chekhov's gun. Why would you introduce an element that doesn't matter? The Emote-kuns do a great job at show don't tell. They are emotions, but given a metaphysical form. Before getting into this video, yes, I chose not to discuss Emote-kuns in their respective character videos for this video, and I did look up on multiple wikis, even the one that the author tweeted out, and Emote-kuns are considered characters, so don't leave that in the comments. Anyways, the Emote-kuns first appear as more of a gag than a reoccurring symbolic message. When we get our first Emote-kun, personal space, simply hissing at the thought of shaking hands with martial law. However, that brings us to the first important aspect of these Emote-kuns, the variety. The wiki lists 12 different Emote-kuns, but there are actually 13, missing the latest Emote-kun. In order, they are anxiety, confrontation, control, depression, fear, friendship, guilt, jealousy, lust, personal space, rage, and regrets. And the wiki calls self-confidence snedfnakflas, which I'll touch on that when I get to self-confidence. Now, if you paid attention to that long list of emotions, then you would have realized that most of them are kind of negative, with the exception of friendship. Kind of like a different series with emotions as characters. Anyways, we do get to see how each emotion can often take control, manipulate, or even harm some of the characters. I already mentioned personal space, however not all Emote-kuns are created equally. Some have a greater impact on the story, or on the characters. For example, personal space. Personal space is much more of a gag than the other Emote-kuns, really only hissing. However, our next emotion is quite different. And I think it's a good way to show how Emote-kuns are actually impactful. Now, something I haven't mentioned is their appearance. Personal space's appearance isn't anything super important, though it does reflect the appearance of a cat. The fangs, the mouth, and of course the hissing. I think it's meant to be non-threatening. It's a cat, often more scared of the situation than how scary the situation actually is. Meanwhile, the next Emote-kuns are quite different in both appearance and importance. Now, Emote-kuns are often character-specific, and yes, I am getting very tired of saying Emote-kuns, but that's their general name, so I'm going to stick with it. Anyways, as our next Emote-kun will show us, Confrontation. One of the weirdest, and I'll be honest, kind of grossest Emote-kuns. While first appearing, when Marshall is a little too loud, its more important moment is when Confrontation appears when Sam faces a small dilemma. After an accident that spills coffee on Sam, that Lucy was kind of responsible for due to her little flirting with the mailman, Charles takes it and runs with it, trying to call her up and likely get her in trouble for flirting. Now this is just a power play. Charles wants Sam to stand up for Lucy, and at first she doesn't, and we see Confrontation appear. It comes suddenly. The idea of confrontation weighs on Sam, and we get to see that with Confrontation, the character, that is. Confrontation is pretty creepy. While the red color palette makes it stand out, it's more than that. It's that the word confrontation seems to be faded into the Emote-kun. The long and seemingly stained teeth, and we actually do get to see a weird tentacle tongue. Outside of its appearances, we do get to see it act, laughing in the background, loving the fact that it terrifies Sam. And we do almost see it grab Sam and keep Sam still. However, Confrontation is interrupted by a different Emote-kun, and probably the most positive one. We see Confrontation get stabbed by friendship. It's a weird statement, but hear me out. When Confrontation is about to fully trap Sam, her friendship, her trust, her loyalty comes out and stops her fears by stabbing Confrontation. Anyways, friendship is one of the few that are actually pretty helpful. Being able to stop other Emote-kuns from stopping our characters from doing things that they should do, like standing up for their friends, with the words trust and loyalty tattooed on his chest, as those are the principles of friendship, the foundation of a good friendship. Moving on, we see the Emote-kun that is referred to as or self-confidence. Now, I've said that most of the Emote-kuns are kind of negative aside from friendship, and that's just because a lot of them are. But I should be clear. I more mean they represent issues and emotions that often hold us back. While the first two we've talked about aren't as negative as most of the other ones, self-confidence isn't actually that bad. In fact, self-confidence doesn't need to be a bad thing. Most people say it's a good thing to have. But that's just it. The way self-confidence is portrayed is very interesting. When Sam dresses up nice with a cute skirt and a kind of tight shirt, she immediately regrets this decision and changes, comparing herself to a child playing dress-up. And we get to see self-confidence behind her, frail, shivering, malnourished, and shaking. And when she changes into her normal attire, we see reflected in the mirror as, unsurprisingly, self-confidence, as it wraps around Sam. But that's the thing about self-confidence. While it can hold you back, if you feed it enough, it can push you forward. When Charles compliments Sam, we see a frail self-confidence get boosted to look like a normal Emote-kun. Now, a lot of these Emote-kuns are based on Sam. Since she's the main character, we get to see her emotions. Therefore, a lot of her Emote-kuns. But we do get to see other characters have their own. Martial Law's Emote-kun is actually very important to who Martial is. Since he has his switch and he's good at hiding feelings, his Emote-kuns are often hidden from us. Martial's emotion, or Emote-kun, or at least the one he's most associated with, is depression. It's more attached to Martial's character than most of Sam's Emote-kuns. Now, most Emote-kuns do something. Some don't do anything directly, like personal space just hissing. Meanwhile, both Confrontation and self-confidence try to entrap the person, to hold them back from the things they might want to do. And friendship stops other Emote-kuns from holding the person back. Heck, even other Emote-kuns that I haven't and won't discuss do something. Anxiety gnaws on a person. Lust is lust. Fear and rage feed into each other. We also get to see fear having scars, as it's more of a scarred personality, or emotion. We get to see rage fight, so on and so forth. However, depression doesn't do much of anything, at least not at first. Now, I'm not a therapist. I barely know anything about mental health, and in this case, lack thereof mental health. But from what I've picked up about depression from just life in general and what I've heard, I think the author has done a great job at showing what and how depression acts. Now, I'm gonna go full into depression, since it's probably the most impactful, also most fleshed out Emote-kun. And since depression is more like a character that affects another character, I'm gonna mention how it affects Martial in his video. At first, like I was leading up to say, depression doesn't do a whole lot of anything. We get to see it just kind of loom over Martial, just kind of standing there, not doing much, not saying much, at first barely even present. More of a passing thought than a mental threat, distraction, obstacle. Compared to other Emote-kuns, early depression isn't noticeable. It doesn't stand out. However, when left untreated or unnoticed, it grows. The next time depression rears its head, it's changed from an almost translucent Emote-kun to one that's starting to take form. It's still slightly translucent, not fully formed, as we do continue to see it loom over Martial. Eventually, it does try to bring Martial down. It tries to entrap him, grab onto him, hold him down. But it fails. As we see, it's still faded. Still not quite formed. But we do get to see it form. Eventually merging, /growing, /fusing, /expanding, I don't know what it's doing with regret and guilt. And eventually striking Martial down all at once, breaking him to the point of crying. I know I just talked about depression, and yes, it's a heavy topic that I recommend you get help with if you are experiencing side effects with. But remember, this video is about the characters of the Emote-kuns. All of them. They are emotions that are inside of us. They're just given a metaphysical form to represent what the emotion is doing. And how do you put emotions into a character chart? I'm putting the Emote-kuns into true neutral. Emotions don't really care about, well, anything. Emotions will do whatever they want. Sometimes they hold us back. Sometimes they make us feel unmatched sadness, or, well, whatever lust does to you. But sometimes they push us forward. They inspire us. They make us feel whole. There are conflicting emotions inside of us. Confrontation, or personal space, or regret, or guilt. But there's also friendship in us. However, as much as emotions, and therefore Emote-kuns, control us, it's only when we give them the opportunity to hold us back that they do hold us back. I think the author has done a great job at showing that we let emotions control us, but when it comes down to it, we control our emotions. In life, it's impossible to have complete control over the emotions. I think it's letting us show that we don't need to let them completely control us either. But that's just what I think. What about you? Do you like how the Emote-kuns represent emotions? Which one's your favorites? Leave it in the comments below. And like always, thank you for watching.